name is María Victoria Abreu. I will be moderating this Cafecito con la Diaspora. I hope you have your coffee in hand or tea or whatever. Yes. Okay, today we're gonna have the Cafecito con la Diaspora Coffee Talks on education's digital transformation, how diasporas can change their countries of origin. We have the pleasure to, well, first, for those of you who don't know me, I'm an independent consultant and I've been collaborating with the Diaspora Development Foundation. I'm a co-founder of Do, which is a company that promotes the Latin culture in the tabletop and games industry. And I'm a representative of Evolution Foundation too, a nonprofit organization that works with the Dominican Republic. And here we have today two amazing panelists that I'm sure that will have a lot of information and knowledge to share with us. We have Mr. Frederik Creugers. He is an experienced technologist with a demonstrated history of enabling outcomes in the higher education market, using the right contextual mix of people, processes, and technologies. I'm not gonna read their whole bios. You can Google them. I just wanted to give a brief bio of who we're talking about. And he is nowadays a strategy advisor at Beyond Academics. And in a few minutes, I'm gonna drop the link to that website where you can learn more about it. Fernando Cuevas is the Senior Global Operations Executive at Follett Higher Education. And he is also the Executive Director of the Diaspora and Development Foundation, the organization that is hosting this Cafecito con la Diaspora and who have all of us here today. So without further ado, we have been living in a pandemic for the past year and a half. However, the digital transformation of the education system and everything around us have been going on way more than that. Like the COVID may have speeded up some things, but not necessarily was the only trigger. We wanted to bring you guys together because your expertise and backgrounds and knowledge, it's an interesting mix of private sector with nonprofits, with innovation, with university campuses. It's just fascinating to see where you're coming from. And we're going to start with Frederik. Please give us a bit of a context, what we're talking about, what are the big changes happening in the education system and prior to the pandemic, and then we can continue on from there.
Sure. I mean, let me just start by.
Let me interview.
Yes.
Before I give you the microphone, please, everybody, keep your microphones muted. And if you have any questions, you can use the chat or wait until the end of the presentations. We will have a Q&A session. Sorry about that, Frederik. Go ahead.
Perfect. No, that's okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Fred. And I guess the first important question everybody must have, why is Fred in a Dominican diaspora talk? I'm married to a Dominican, have been for 20 years. I own a house in DR as well, so I'm there regularly. Unfortunately, my Spanish is not at the level where I can actually have an intelligent conversation, so I apologize. But the Dominican Republic is a bit of a passion for me because of just the experiences that I've had there, the sense of community, the sense of family. Very different from where I grew up in the Netherlands, which is cold and clinical, but efficient. So that's firstly. So yes, I've been working in higher education for over 20 years in technology, helping universities adopt technology, and then most importantly, how can they innovate and how can they provide programs and services and degrees that meet the needs of the marketplace while also meeting the needs of society as a whole. So technology is a passion of mine. Education is a passion of mine. And as you said, Maria, the changes at the moment are dramatic. If you look at in the United States alone, there are estimates that in the next couple of years, we're going to see several hundred universities literally go out of business because the cost of education has skyrocketed compared to everything else. The changes in attitudes and the COVID pandemic has only accelerated that, is that people start to question, why am I paying this much tuition for an education that I'm not 100% sure I want or need. We see in the marketplace, we see companies like Google and Apple or Deloitte and Accenture, they've dropped their degree requirements. So they say it's nice if you have a 4-year degree, but it's not required. Google is offering a corporate career track certificate, which is about 6 months old, 6 months long. And over 500 companies have already signed up to that, saying that they will accept that as the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. So there's a lot of changes going on. I mean, later on in the presentation or in the talk, I'll share some slides to show you what's going on in the rest of the world as well, and why this particular time is unique in the sense that if we had this discussion 20 years ago, it would have been a very, very different discussion. We're now in what's called the fourth industrial revolution, which really means the acceleration of change, the merging of things like AI, the Internet of Things, biology, etc. And we're looking at a future where a country like the Dominican Republic can take advantage of these new technologies that are going to fundamentally change the way we interact with each other, our relationship with, for example, the government, nations among each other. So unlike 20 years ago or 25 years ago, the DR now has a chance to take those technologies and leapfrog a lot of other nations. And this is a time when it's no longer a matter of trying to keep up. You're either in the front or you're behind, and which is, and this is very true for the US as well, because it's not just in DR. So I'll stop there, and we'll talk more in a second.
Yes, thank you. Fernando, give us your point of view to start. What is the new normal in the education-related businesses? What have happened in campuses all around the United States? And from your private sector point of view, what are the challenges?
So thanks, Maria Victoria, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Certainly a great topic, a topic that I'm very passionate about. And it's ironic that Freddie and I know each other, and we met here in Miami. He worked for one of the institutions that I work with, and it so happens that he worked at Columbia University, so did I, and he also worked in CUNY up in New York, and so did I as well. So we kind of crossed paths and in one way, shape, or form in our past without really knowing each other. So Maria Victoria, the interesting part is that when someone talks to me about digital transformation, from my perspective, a lot of folks think of digital books, and digital transformation goes above and beyond just content. It's the student experience and what they're going through and what the institutions are doing today to enhance that student experience, to Freddie's point. Enrollment is down across the board, across the U.S. A lot of schools are struggling for, how do we attract that student to come to our institution versus another one? Mm-hmm. There has to be some level of, technology that has to be put in place in order for them to truly differentiate themselves from other institutions in the country. So I live in Miami. And for the most part, if you look at all the different state institutions, when you match them and you put them side by side, there's no difference. They offer exactly the same thing. And, in the past, or pre-COVID, I should say, there were certainly enough students going around for them to be able to market to. And I think that that's going to change significantly over the next year or so, because they're going to have to offer something special. I think that today, a lot of folks are thinking, well, we're going to go back to, on ground, face-to-face learning come the fall. And I think they're going to be highly surprised that even though we may certainly go back to some normality this fall, every institution in the United States and across the world has realized that learning remote has been very successful. A lot of schools are revamping or enhancing their online offerings to be able to attract more students. And I think we're going to see a shift, even though this fall, a lot of schools are saying we're going to go back to face-to-face learning. I think long-term, we're going to see that fade away, and we're going to see a significant number of schools just strictly focusing on distance learning and online learning versus just the face-to-face. The Chronicle of Higher Education noted on an article yesterday that, obviously that on-campus experience is still important. I think that's going to be the exception rather than the norm as we move forward with this digital transformation era that we're going through right now.
Yeah, and I'm a perfect example. I mean, Fernando, I agree with you that enrollments are going to have pressures also because of demographic changes. Like, for example, in 2008, 2009, when we had the financial crisis in the United States, and globally to an extent, this resulted in a dramatic decline in births. So we're going to see that demographic cliff start to hit around 2025. Now, the good news for a lot of universities and colleges is that we're moving slowly, but I think it's going to accelerate. We're moving to lifelong learning. Like, for example, Stanford University here in the United States is experimenting with a concept called open loop university, open loop learning. So what they're envisioning is that in the future, and I think probably the near future, is that if you get admitted into Stanford, you get admitted into a 6-year program, meaning you pay for 6 years. The first 4 years will be traditional, and the last 2 years will be credits available to you throughout your entire life that where you need to reskill, upskill, etc. Right? Because we're living in a time now where, on average, people have 5 or 6 careers over the time of their lives. And for example, myself, I'm a perfect example. I'm passionate about blockchain. I'm really interested. I'm working in the blockchain space as well. So I decided, you know what? Let me really try to learn as much about it as I can and get in touch with some of the experts in the field, both academic and also corporate. So I decided to do a master's, but the best master's program that I found was actually at the University of Barcelona. So I'm doing a master's online at the University of Barcelona. And this is an opportunity, of course, for all universities in DR as well, is that if we're moving to an online model, your potential student population is not just the Dominican Republic. If you offer the right programs, you have all of Latin America available to you. So.
Yeah, and that it's applicable to any country, not only the Dominican Republic. Any country in this moment in time can take advantage of all these new innovations and processes and methods of learning that definitely are changing the game. I wanted to, let's not forget, this Cafecito, it's basically to learn the digital transformation of education, but how can the diaspora, the people living abroad, away from their countries of origin, how can we, I'm officially part of the Dominican diaspora in the United States, help with that change, with that transformation in our countries of origin? And with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, what does sustainable innovation in education looks like for you when you think of ministers of education, ministries of education, or like you see, like the authorities, but also the general audience, teachers, these different actors, private sectors, the ones that are making the content or selling the content, people that are making and selling the softwares for education. What does sustainable innovation looks like when you think of that? And putting into perspective the role of the diaspora. Does that make any sense? Are we pushing it here?
No, Fernando, go ahead.
Not at all. So Maria Victoria, I think the role of the diaspora is to obviously get involved. My company, I should say the company that I work with, we attempted to penetrate the international market, and we obviously work with Pontificia Universidad Madre Maestra in the Dominican Republic. And one of the things that I noticed from a global perspective is that the content providers, the publishers, the publishing houses did not realize the opportunity that exists in Latin America. So I'm going to talk globally, not necessarily just the Dominican Republic. So one of the things that has been put forward over the last, I want to say 10 to 15 years, has been the development of platforms across the board of the different publishing industry. So the top publishers, Pearson, McGraw, Cengage, King, Wiley, and so on and so forth. They've put together these platforms that are adaptive learning platforms. So there is AI built into these platforms, and all of the work it's done outside of the classroom. And therefore, it sort of transforms the in-classroom experience to a more of a dialogue. And it has been, so there's data to support that. These platforms have been very effective over the last 10, 15 years, yet none of these platforms are available in Spanish, or they're not available to Latin America. And I think that COVID has certainly hit a nerve when it comes to some of these publishing houses. And they're now developing these platforms to be made available. So I think that the diaspora can certainly become familiar and become educated as far as what these platforms are. And in order for us to be able to truly have an impact, the ministers of education in the Dominican Republic, there's a minister of higher education. I think they need to be involved and understand there is a cost associated with implementing these technologies. But at the end of the day, when you look at student outcomes and realizing that, institutions want to improve not only the retention, but also the graduating rates, I think some of these platforms are going to be critical. From a digital transformation standpoint, to Fred's earlier point, there's going to be the leaders and there's no one going to be behind it, because at the end of the day, and I'll show you a graph in a minute, there's a company called S&P Global. They did a study of over 451 institutions, and they did a study for both higher ed institutions and then private institutions. And till today, there's companies that don't understand and don't feel that there needs to be a strategy formed around digital transformation in education or business for that matter. And I think that that's going to cripple their ability to grow. I know for a fact that there are students across the US. So to my earlier point, oh, there it is. Thank you. I'll speak to that graph now. So S&P did a study, and one of the questions they asked was, what is your digital transformation strategy? And they did it 2 years in a row, just for the sake of comparison. And as you can see, in 2019, 10% indicated that they didn't really think that they needed a strategy. It was too soon to tell. They kind of lowered it to 8%, so that it was only a 2% difference, even during COVID. Some institutions felt that there's really no need for digital transformation strategy. The concerning part about this particular graph is that you still have about 45% of the institutions and the companies that were surveyed that believe that they're still in the consideration evaluation stage and realizing, okay, do we really need a transformation strategy moving forward to grow, or do we not? And I think that's certainly a concern across the board, because in my conversations with the different institutions that I work with, that's definitely an issue. Realizing that if you do not have a strategy to move forward, because we're all fighting for the same students, I think you're going to see some, to Freddie's point, you're going to see some institutions go out of business. Now, having said that, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, Colombia, Puerto Rico, even though they're part of the US, they have started to understand that there's an opportunity, right? So in the past, schools in the US were attracting international students to come and study abroad. And part of that process require that student to request a F1 visa, which is a visa. They would have to be approved through the US immigration department. And then that student had the opportunity to come and study here in the US and get a degree from a US institution. Well, COVID kind of removed that barrier. Now that student does not necessarily those students are not required to have an F1 visa and come to the US. They can get a degree from the US from anywhere in the world. So they eliminate that process. Now they're paying a higher premium because they're having to pay an out-of-state tuition. But our countries, the DR and some Latin American countries, can see this as an opportunity for them to do exactly the same. Market to those international students, realizing that in the Dominican Republic, Pucamaima, UTESA, UNIBE, they growth in the number of students that are going to the DR because the cost of education or the cost of a degree in the Dominican Republic is a lot cheaper when compared to the US. So I think that as we move forward, not to sound repetitive, those institutions that realize and understand that there is a need and sort of an emergency need for them to truly impact their institution, they're going to have to create a transformation, digital transformation strategy ASAP in order for them to be able to become the leaders in the market. Freddie?
Why, you know, you're showing slides. I mean, come on. Maria, can I share my screen for a second?
Okay.
Open something up real quick. Sorry. Let me see. Let me know if you can see that.
Yes, we can see.
You can see that? Okay. So, because you asked a specific question, right? You said, how can the diaspora help? And it's not just in regards to education, but on a broader scale. So let's do a comparison. I'm from the Netherlands. I was born and raised in the Netherlands. Small country, 60 million square miles, as a GDP of about 900 billion a year, has 17 million people. If you compare that to DR is 18.7 million square feet, right? So it's not that much bigger. But the Netherlands is, believe it or not, the second largest agricultural exporter in the world. Only the United States is bigger. All of that is because of one thing only: innovation and a very tight relationship between industry, the government, and academia. So in the Netherlands, they have an agriculture university, Wageningen it's called, and they work together with the farmers to the extent that today, for example, a Dutch farmer uses 90% less water than the average farmer here in the US. If you look at Singapore in 1962 became independent from first the UK. They were a colony of the British, and they merged with Malaysia, became independent from them, and it was a predominantly agricultural society. Singapore is 433 square miles. That's not a typo. It's like a city state, really, right? Their GDP today is 300 billion a year. One of the most advanced societies in the world, with a population of 3 million. Now, there are many reasons for that, but Lee Kuan Yew, and let me also say that Singapore is an example for a lot of countries. However, Lee Kuan Yew, who was the longest serving PM, I believe, I think he was president, PM, in the world, is a little bit authoritarian. But the key to their success, they will say, was 100% education, right? Because the Netherlands doesn't really have natural resources. No oil, a little bit of gas, no minerals, no nothing. Singapore, same thing. If you look at Israel, 8,550 square miles, GDP of 394 billion with 2.2 million people. Cyprus, tiny island in the Mediterranean Sea, off the coast of Israel, has 3,572 square miles. I'm sorry, there's a dollar sign there, right? And their GDP is 25 billion, but with a population of 500K. Now, if you look at DR, 18.7 billion square feet, GDP of 88.9 billion with a population of 10.74 million. My point of showing this is that every single one of these countries, the Netherlands, Singapore, Israel, Cyprus, did not have any natural resources. And they all decided very actively that education had to be number one, and that the number one export of the country, the number one resource of the country is human capital. So I think number one, what the diaspora can do is, most are here in the United States, not all, but most, is start to build networks and an awareness that we have countries around the world that have done this. So what can we learn from these nations? And then if you look, interestingly, there's a Belgian psychologist called Geert Hofstede who did an analysis of, just like people have particular characteristics, cultures and countries have particular characteristics. So you look at, and he has this several things he looks at: power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, indulgence, etc. I'm not going to go into all of these, but notice if you look at the long-term orientation, Singapore is the highest, Netherlands second, then Israel after that. The Dominican Republic is the difference is staggering. And that's long-term orientation. So anything that we're going to do in the Dominican Republic or as a diaspora, take other countries as a guide and realize that, especially in Asia, when they think about developing anything, they're thinking generationally. They're not thinking about 5-year plans, 10 years plans. They think this generation, next generation. And again, the key for this is education. Last slide. And I'm going to tie it all together. So if you look at Dominican Republic over the last couple of decades, you could see that a lot of the economic growth actually came from remittances. Remittances is huge, right? So if you look at from January to November 2020, remittances climbed to nearly $7.4 billion. I mean, it's a staggering amount. It's the same in a lot of countries in Latin America. Nearly 85% of the flows over the past 8 months originated from the diaspora. So congratulations. I mean, that shows commitment and to your country. Now, the average fees were 5.45%. Actually, if you use Western Union, it's going to be a lot more. It'll be 10%, 11%. But that translates into $400 million in fees. So if I think of digital transformation and blockchain specifically, which is built on top of the internet, blockchain is basically, it's a type of a database, but it has unique characteristics in the sense that it's immutable, it cannot be changed. You cannot change, whatever you put in the blockchain cannot be changed. You can add to it, you can append it, but you can't change it. And on top of that, you can build what's called smart contracts, which basically means that you can now have relationships peer-to-peer without an intermediary. Right? So a notary is an intermediary, a realtor is an intermediary, a government is an intermediary. So blockchain is now going to allow relationships between organizations and peer-to-peer that where everybody can trust the system. So we look at the remittances, there is one crypto asset called XRP and Stellar, which are made for international payments. And by the way, international payments, the entire system is built on 60s technology. If you send $200, you would pay 10 cents instead of $10, right? So if I'm thinking outside of the box, right? Now imagine a diaspora built blockchain that instead of saying, for example, 10 cents, reduce the fees to 10.5%. You allocate those funds to a Diaspora Development Fund for projects, etc., in the Dominican Republic. And again, using blockchain, you can cut out the middleman. You can fund projects directly. Corruption will, which is always an issue in any country in the world, can be almost reduced to zero. then imagine that 50% of the people that send it regularly now send it with, I'm using the Diaspora as an example, use the Diaspora app, and we charge 2.5%. You have a fund that's generating $100 million per year. See, this is the power of digital transformation. This is the world that we're going into, right? We have an industry that raises $400 million a year off the backs, really, of people working in the United States, sending money back to DR. You can virtually eliminate that.
Is that already happening with any other diaspora that you know? Is any other diaspora in the world using blockchain to trigger development projects? Or
yes. Yeah. So I'm an early investor in a particular blockchain project called Cardano. Cardano, and I'm going to share the link. Actually, I'm going to put it in so you guys can all read it. I'm going to put it in the chat. So Cardano is an enterprise blockchain. It's been developed over many, many years. The goal of that blockchain is to provide literally a new infrastructure for developing nations to use. Think of financial inclusion. There's a lot of unbanked in the world, billions, right? You can, I have 80% of my assets are actually on the blockchain, right? I have funds allocated where I get 8.6% interest, for example. That's unheard of. But if you look at the link, so Cardano just signed a deal with the Minister of Education in the country of Ethiopia, and they're going to onboard 5 million students and staff and faculty onto the Cardano blockchain. It's going to be a digital ID, a self-sovereign ID, and what that means that you will always share. You own the data. You will share only what's necessary. Think, for example, if you go into a store and you want to buy alcohol, and you say, "Oh, I need to see your age." Well, you're showing your ID, but you're showing your address, your name, etc. But all they need to know is are you eligible, yes or no? So that takes care of that. Then transcripts, degrees, certificates, all going to be published in a digital wallet, which you will have on your phone, which now means that you control your degrees, certificates, etc. You want to share it with anybody that you want. And you're now collecting a lot of data, right? So all the students that are all the grades and any other artifacts that you want to collect, you can start taking a look at that, start to analyze that, because big data is we're in the age of big data.
That's the real real resource there.
Exactly. So that is a resource. Yeah. So I'll stop there. So that, but I highly recommend you looking at the Africa special that you're doing. Cardano is close to my heart, and if I could bring Cardano to DR, that would be wonderful.
We will definitely read that. I remember asking you in a previous conversation that you will have to make blockchain for dummies.
Sure.
I mean, we read a lot, but it's so interesting. Sometimes you hear about it and it sounds so foreign and so out of this world, but at the same time, it's already happening. And it matters, as Fernando said, this world is now, either you're a leader or you're not gonna be in it, period.
And Maria Victoria, at the end of the day, it's this technology already exists, and there are definitely a lot of companies and institutions that are already using it. And there's definitely, we call them crazies today that they talk about the fact that blockchain is going to break down the barriers of me getting a degree from a university X or Y. It's just a degree, and there's no reason to have a particular institution and have to pay a certain amount for a particular institution when blockchain kind of levels the playing field when it comes to education and how it's being offered and delivered. I think over the next, I want to say, and Fred, 3 to 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to see a significant shift in the number of institutions that are in place right now. I honestly believe that in order for an institution to, as I said earlier, to capture that student, to be able to increase and maintain their enrollment, they're going to have to offer something very special. I think that right now we're shifting to that. And, you know, when we look at blockchain and what could be done, I mean, from a scholarship standpoint, could be generated and created with blockchain technology. And Fred, the other day when we were talking about the fact that, you know, from a diaspora perspective, you know, we certainly are very concerned about, you know, our countries or the government in our country not being necessarily very honest, right? So, and you talked about how using blockchain technology that eliminates the, you know, the need for us not to trust the government in one way, shape, or form. Can you elaborate on that? I know we talked about it last week, but I think
it's not just trusting the government. It's simply like so. You know, I don't want to go into a really technical discussion. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that if you look at history, and if you look at the first writings, right, which the first known writings that we have, it was actually a ledger. Right, ledgers is what is the backbone of our society, and ledgers require middlemen, right? So if you're trading within your own village, for example, you know everybody. I trust them. Hey, you know, you can't screw me over because I know where you live. Once you start trading with the second village, third village, fourth village, and over distance, this becomes harder. So trust, we've allocated trust to a trusted middleman. For example, a lawyer. You know, or a bank. A bank is a trusted middleman. If you're doing a you know, business transaction, you trust the bank to hold your money and allocate the money to whatever business deal that you have going on. Know this about the blockchain. You don't have to go into it very deeply. Blockchain takes the place of that middleman. It's a disintermediating tool. I can have a contract, as we call a smart contract, on the blockchain, where I can basically program a relationship between two individuals where there is no need for both to actually trust each other, because the contract itself will ensure that whatever terms that you've agreed to are applied. So yeah, so to your point, Fernando, and there's an interesting angle to how you phrased it. You know, a lot of the reasons why in many nations, you know, dishonesty or whatever you want to call it, corruption, etc. And it's everywhere. There's just different levels depending. You know, a lot of that is a function of inefficiencies in the system as well, right? I mean, the interesting thing about the Soviet Union when it collapsed, you know, people looked at the Soviet Union and go, oh, but I thought communism was supposed to take care of everything. Well, it didn't. You know, and in those cases where it didn't, there was an entire shadow economy that was running. So I think a lot of times in countries that's the case. That's the case as well. If you look right now, unfortunately, Venezuela, Argentina, you see the use of you know, of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin specifically. It's becoming dramatic because they do not trust the currency anymore with inflation. So things are moving, you know, things are moving. And for me, I look at right now, I'm advising the University of Miami, and specifically their Department of Continuing Education, you know, thinking about what does continuing education need to look like, what kind of technology do we need, etc. And the point that I've made, and I see that we have Frank here as well, Rector Rodriguez, that I think that the continuing education model, right? So I think, for example, in the Dominican Republic, I think institutions, very broadly based institutions like UTESA, are going to become more of the model than the other universities. So I think there is a very large opportunity.
Thank you. And something that you mentioned earlier caught my attention. You said, obviously, one of the most important roles of the diasporas is to create awareness, and through our networks, bring these innovations to our countries of origin so they can, because I feel like sometimes, I mean, I don't want this to be misunderstood, but it's like sometimes the authorities may just lose themselves in the day-to-day operations of that big system, right? And there's no one really thinking about what's next in the world, what's happening in those big countries, developing countries, what's the next innovation, where can we move next? And because the diaspora is exposed to those innovations in their countries, wherever they're located in the world, bringing it back to their countries of origin through whatever channels they may be, it's definitely an opportunity.
And it's the power of the network, right? We're moving from hierarchical societies to really decentralized groups, networks.
Exactly.
By the way, what we're doing right here is digital transformation.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We're on a Zoom. We're talking. We're connecting. Right. And I'm on Clubhouse a lot. Clubhouse and Zoom-ins with Beyond Academics. We do a lot of mini conferences almost. But really, what we're in the business of is connecting people. So specifically, university presidents and college presidents and just in general. And if you look at the power of people coming together and then actually starting to work on, for example, projects, that's extremely powerful. And I think there's an opportunity here as well. We're in a networked economy right now. It's no longer just listening to one person who has all the expertise. You can get 5 or 10 people together.
Yeah, and Freddie, to at the end of the day, the Dominican Republic, there's no reason why we cannot lead Latin America when it comes to technology and the digital revolution. I mean, so Elon Musk is setting up satellites so that they can provide internet options or free internet to the world, right? So the access to information and access to technology is not going to be unachievable. It's going to be very much achievable across the board in the world. And I don't see why the DR, being who we are, and the fact that we, have been in the forefront of a lot of the different innovations that we have put forward, I don't see why we cannot just take the lead when it comes to the digital transformation in education. And I think we have a unique opportunity to truly enhance and create an impact across the world. Like I said earlier, I think
now we have a public commitment in front of everyone, because the 3 of us and everyone here in this conference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now it does require an investment, but I think in the long-term investment that is going to truly benefit, everyone in the Dominican Republic and beyond, obviously. There's another, the S&P, they kept asking, or they kept creating, I'm gonna share my screen. Give me 1 second. Here it is. So they sort of asked the question as to what are the things that are in the forefront when you think about digital transformation. What are the things that you believe should be at the top of mind? And again, this is a research done by S&P Global, over 450 institutions and companies surveyed. And enhancing that the customer service engagement was top of mind. It was definitely the one major goal. And as I said at the beginning of our call or our Zoom meeting, that student experience is going to be critical. Is why am I going to choose your institution versus another one based on the fact that you're offering me the same education? So I think customer service and engagement is going to be critical. Improving business agility, improving automation. How can I, and Fred in his prior life worked on several applications that truly connects the students to that, again, on-campus experience or outside of campus experience, and being able to provide them with the tools and resources necessary for them to be successful in the palm of their hand. And I think that that's certainly a lot of companies and a lot of, whether it's a student information system or learning information systems, are building AI, into their platforms in order for them to gather the data. And then, to level it off, the top 5 or the top 4 would be to increase competitive advantage? How do we differentiate ourselves from everybody else? And I think that that's going to be critical. Now, when we talk about digital transformation in education or digital transformation period, you know, one of the things that I just wanted to show you a very simple graph, right? So today you go to a particular store, and this is what you see. Your graph on the left is a kind of a shelf talker with the price and a description of the product. If it's on sale, it kind of differentiates and it calls out that it's on sale and you have to grab it. But it doesn't say, it doesn't really have the features of the product. It doesn't say what it's used for. It doesn't say whether they have enough inventory or not. Mm-hmm. And when you look at digital transformation, it's as simple as moving to the picture on the right. It's a digital kind of a shelf talker that you can switch it. You can call out the brand. It matches it to your inventory levels at the store. It tells you it could tell you the features. It gives you a QR code. I mean, when we talk about digital transformation, we're in that today, and we've been in it for quite some time. It definitely accelerated the process, but it certainly enables us to have a lot more information. And when we're buying something, you're able to make a conscious, educated decision right on the spot based on the information that's being provided to you. I was at a particular store a couple of weeks ago, looking at TVs and refrigerators, and it was amazing the amount of information that's now being provided to the consumer when it comes to it's in your face, it gives you the features, it gives you all the rankings, it gives you everything on a particular digital monitor. And I think that certainly when we talk about digital transformation, those are some of the things that are part of that transformation that nobody really looks at it as a digital transformation that's going on right now. And I know that Fred, you had some examples as well.
No, we definitely see it when we talk on commerce and everything that we basically do every day. But it's harder to, for some reason, I don't know, or maybe, I mean, I'm sure that it's not just me. It's harder to identify the real digital transformation happening in education, other than, as you said at the beginning, content, or go into a digital book, ebook instead of the regular hard books. Like, there's so much more happening. It's just either back office and we don't see it as often as we see these things because we shop every day or whatever, or there are so many opportunities yet to be achieved that some countries have gone there, but not necessarily our countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. So, but
it's not equal in the United States either.
Exactly.
Right? Because we love to. Everybody talks about how great the United States higher education system is, but you're only focusing on the top 100, right? Right. So, I mean, I've worked, like I said, when I was at Columbia is a $6 billion organization. Mm-hmm. I actually think it's a hedge fund that also offers education. So if you're at or Arizona State, I think Arizona State University is probably one of the most innovative schools in the United States, where you can see actually classrooms that have technology embedded, I mean, even including VR options, where if you're in a chemistry class, you can see them all, the atoms in front of you. So I think that's very interesting. But you're right, it's a traditional organization.
Correct.
It definitely is. But I was speaking to the CEO, and it's interesting he calls himself that, of the University of Nicosia in Cyprus. Mm-hmm. And he came from banking, went into higher education, is now in charge of that, of that school. So it's a smaller school in a smaller country, but they're offering one of the world's first blockchain degrees. Right. And when I spoke to him, I said, this would be great. And by the way, I'm sorry, Frank, I used your name. I said, I know people that they would love this. And his answer was, connect me. Right. I said, and that is the power of education as well. A lot of higher education institutions want to collaborate. But if you have institutions that are all offering the same, right? If you have 5 universities, they're all offering nursing, they're all offering computer science, they're all offering engineering. Now you're competing, right? So maybe there needs to be a little bit of differentiation. But I thought there was an example that we spoke about earlier, Fernando. Do we have that slide of the cockpits? By any chance?
I can. María Victoria, you want to do it or you want me to do it?
You'll go get it. I'm not sure exactly which one you want. If you have it already there and it's working. We have 10 more minutes. I will encourage all of the participants, if you have any questions or comments, in the chat, or then we can do it live.
So let's finish with this perhaps, and then go into Q&A or the discussion. So I just want to show this, Fernando. I showed this to Fernando as well, and it's very interesting. So back in the 80s, we got the space shuttle. This is a picture of the space shuttle cockpit. Looks very traditional, the way we think a spaceship should look like, right? And after 2011 was the last shuttle flight. There was a competition in 2014 where NASA had an open bid for companies to bid on creating the next astronaut delivery vehicle. And it awarded the contract to two companies, Boeing and SpaceX, which is of course Elon Musk. So if you go to the next one, Fernando. So this is partially the cockpit of the Boeing Starliner. I couldn't find a better picture, but you can imagine this 3-4 times more, these screens, buttons, surrounding the astronaut. Boeing, as you know, I mean, they literally had rocket scientists working for them. You know, some of the smartest engineers, some of the smartest, people on the planet are working for Boeing on this starship. And this is what they came up with. And most of them, by the way, worked on the space shuttle. Now, if you look at Elon Musk, the SpaceX Dragon, this is the cockpit, 3 screens. Right? So when you talk about digital transformation, this is what digital transformation means for me. It's not just, becoming more efficient. It's dramatically rethinking what we can do. And it took an organization of engineers thinking, starting from first principles with no preconceptions to come up with this design. So if we talk about the diaspora, we talk about the possibilities of what a nation like the Dominican Republic can do. I would say that we can get ideas from anyone, and think outside of the box. You don't have to try to catch up. This is a time where it's no longer about catching up. You can radically rethink how to do things and then actually lead. And by the way, leverage the billions and billions of dollars of investments that other countries and other corporations have already made. Right. So anyways,
Absolutely.
I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Fernando, do you want to say some final words?
No, I think at the end of the day, there's a couple of takeaways, and that is digital transformation is an ongoing process. And to Freddie's point, I think that institutions and countries have an opportunity to really drive the market and become the first in the market to be able to understand and really drive digital transformation. I think industry leaders are becoming more data driven and focused on automation. And I think that that's going to be key and important. And I believe that, again, they can start from scratch and understanding that if you really realize the digital transformation that's taking place right now in the world, I think we certainly have the opportunity, the unique opportunity to be able to lead the world in a lot of the things that are happening and a lot of things that we can do, whether it's from the diaspora perspective and focusing in the Dominican Republic or Latin America, or here in the US, obviously our company, the company that I work with, is focused on, how do we reinvent ourselves and being able to provide universities with solutions rather than being a service provider, sort of. We want to be able to bring solutions to them. It makes us a lot more credible, and it certainly keeps us relevant in the market.
Maria, we forgot to talk about one thing, and I apologize. Yeah. But I think it's very important to actually point out.
Go ahead. We still have a few minutes, and I don't see any questions yet. Right. So go ahead.
Everything what we're talking about and the possibilities, please know that the most important part is to serve those people that are not being served today, right? So the top 10% of people in the Dominican Republic who have access to education, and most importantly, networks and information, they'll find their way regardless, right? The true power of digital transformation and education needs to happen in those communities and with those people that don't have those opportunities today. And for example, with blockchain, you can think about microloans, to people, minimal amounts that might not mean anything to us, but can actually change
their life
our
forever.
life.
Yes.
Right.
So I just want to say everything we said is relevant for that as well. That's it.
Okay, we have one question from Rosa Maria. Investing in human capital aside from education, what other areas are other countries focusing their efforts in?
I think infrastructure, right? So it's you need to have the infrastructure in place. Fernando spoke about a little bit with, for example, internet access and broadband internet access. The Dominican Republic actually is not that bad compared to a lot of other countries.
That's right.
Well, I do have to say, I live in Miami. My internet went out twice this week, so so I think infrastructure. And one of the things about you all heard about the cloud. All it means is you now have the ability to connect. All you need is if you have that internet connection, you can now connect to the exact same technology that the richest countries and the richest corporations in the world use. So I think that's an area that's so I think that's number one. Number two, organizational structures and government structures, right? Because a lot of this, most of the work that I do, and Fernando the same thing. Fernando and I don't run into technology problems. We run into people problems, cultural problems, structure problems, right? So you can have the greatest idea, but if there's no avenue to actually express that, it's very difficult. So
digital transformation has to somehow find a way to more efficient way to transform behaviors and attitudes.
Well, there are egos, right? We're here, and I think at the end of the day, to Fred's point. I was going to say infrastructure and structure. I think to me, in addition to human capital, that's the other investment. It's understanding that Fred could be smarter than I am, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that he's better than me, right? So I think the ego sometimes get in the way of us being able to leap ahead and make the changes necessary for things to work the way they are. So Fred and I work for a particular university. I'm not going to name names, but the reality is the egos got in the way of us being able to do some really, really great things that would truly, truly impact the student experience. And it wasn't the fact that it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't the fact that there were not enough funding available to make this happen. It was about certain individuals indicating that, well, if Fernando and Fred are putting this forward, then I'm kind of being left behind or put to the side and realize that, how am I gonna look in front of the board or something to that effect? And I think that certainly affects progress. So I think that certainly needs to be put aside.
Which ties perfectly, and with this I will conclude, with the whole notion of the diaspora being the one with a longer perspective on maybe and not maybe believing in the common good or wanting the common good for the collective in our countries of origin. Then we, as Rodolfo just put in the chat, we can be the most important resource for any country interested in making the development jump, the diaspora.
Think about any area of development.
Yes.
I can guarantee you there is somebody in the 1 to 2 million people in the diaspora that's an expert in that area.
Thank you so much, both Frederik and Fernando, and for all of the participants here. We will keep you posted on the next Cafecito, probably next month. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging my English.
Everyone.
I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Freddie, you're going to have to do it in Spanish the next time.
Start practicing.
Spanish or Dominican?
Either one. It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for participating. Truly appreciate you being part of this call.